insane in the membrane? What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls Podcast, coming to you live on this beautiful Sunnyside Summer Thursday. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including, get this, 50% off your first 3 online purchases.
Oh, that's Will Go Weed
with
right
that
there.
promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify for. That's right, 50% off your first 3 purchases.
Like Pat Matt.
Best dispensary in the city.
That's 5-0, not
Hands
1-5.
down.
Correct.
Wow.
50.
Dave, we
5-0.
know free tastes better, but what does 50% off taste?
Oh, that's a great question.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
50% more delicious.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Everything
Exclusive
from
supplies.
Sunnyside.
Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, bright buys every day, only for 21 and over in Illinois Med card holders.
That's a deal.
I'm Pack Bulls _Pack Big Day. Bow! BAWL Sports. Will the Go Gottlieb. Will _Gottlieb. Our pal and producer on the controls. The one and only Joey Spathis at Joey Spathis. Fun stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about whether or not the Bulls should maybe keep moving things around. Even though we are sort of in the back end of the offseason, free agency has quieted down. There are still some interesting names out there. Mm-hmm. And the Bulls do have a non-guaranteed contract on their books in Onuralp Bitim, who they could waive if they want to bring in someone else. We're going to talk about that, their current cap flexibility, maybe some names to target. But before we get to all of that, Dave, I know you wanted to touch on a few elephants in the room and what it means for some of the younger guys on this team. We all got really excited about watching Modest play in Summer League.
Oh, boy.
He is just the newest young face. We have Julian. We've got Dalen. Mm-hmm. We have Kobe and Io ascending. Mm-hmm. Of course, the other newcomer via trade, Josh Giddey, also part of that new young core. But Zach's still here.
He is.
Vooch still here.
Yep.
Lonzo.
Yep.
Still here.
Yeah. And wanting to play.
Another workout video of his going around on Bulls Twitter the other day.
We're good.
Looks like a guy who might actually be ready to play basketball. So, of course, that begs the question, youth movement, but half of your old core is still here, essentially, in Zach, Vooch, and Lonzo. Yeah. So what the heck does that mean for Billy's rotation?
Exactly, and that is the question. I think we're all on board with the youth movement. We want to see young guys play. We want to see them do their thing. Billy Donovan is going to play the best players who are ready to play. That's his job as a coach, all right, is to play the best players that are here to play. If those guys aren't here, then he'll play whoever's behind them, but what we're dealing with right now is those 3 guys are here. So I guess my question is, with those guys in the rotation, because they will be, what young guy is not going to be the one, or is basically going to be the odd man out in this rotation right now? Because there are several young guys I'm looking at, and I'm like, I don't know if you were going to get any time, in this kind of rotation. You might get a game or 2 to do something, but I don't know how consistent it'll be with Billy going, with his veterans like any coach would do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tricky when you start to think about, okay, this Bulls team right now has 15 guys on the roster. Obviously, they've got two-way spots, but those guys don't really figure to be rotation players at this point. But you've got Kobe, Zach, Josh Giddey, Patrick Williams, Nikola Vucevic, probably going to be the starting 5. After that, you've got Io, Jalen Smith, Modest Buzelis, Dylan Terry, Julian Phillips, Javon Carter, Torrey Craig, Lonzo Ball, Onuralp Bitim, and Chris Duarte.
Yeah,
Duarte.
Forgot about Duarte. Oh, my God.
They really are like 14 deep of guys who can play.
Yeah.
And so I think, 1, that tells you that there's going to be some competition for minutes. But 2, it's like that is kind of a big question going into the season. Is this going to be a situation where Billy really leans on the veterans to try to produce wins? Or is it going to be okay, Torrey Craig, I understand you are probably a better player at this point than Modest Buzelis, but Modest Buzelis is part of the future. Torrey Craig is not. So do we just go with that? Because there's 240 minutes of game time. Mm-hmm. 48 minutes per position times 5, right? Mm-hmm. That's 240 minutes. When you start to allocate those minutes to certain guys, it becomes very clear very quickly that not everybody's going to get the minutes that they want.
True.
And that means that the rotation is probably going to be a little bit shorter than 14 because no coach plays 14 guys. But it also means that like the guys who, even if they go 10 or 11 deep, the guys who were playing 37, 38 minutes a game last year, Kobe, even Io at the end of the season, those minutes are going to be chopped down to 30, 32, 28 maybe in Io's case. Mm-hmm. And is he going to be happy with that? Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, you need to play Zach and you need to play Vooch because the best way to get them out of here is to prove that they can still put up numbers. And it's hard to put up numbers unless they're playing big minutes. So that is definitely going to be a concern. And I was playing around with it today to try to just figure out like what the rotation was going to look like. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of questions still. I mean, we don't know how many minutes if any, Lonzo's going to be able to play in a game. Like, I would imagine he's going to get like anywhere from 6 to 10 minutes a game to start. Just like a couple of stints, see how he looks, and then move on. But yeah, I mean, Kobe was playing 37 minutes, 38 minutes.
I mean, he was last season with DeMar in the top 5 in total minutes played last season.
Right.
And it's not like you just got rid of DeMar and now there's all these minutes opened up. It's like, okay, well, you bring in Josh Giddey and Modest Buzelis, and Patrick Williams comes back from injury.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, like this roster is deep, and I'm not sure if any of these, if it's deep in the sense that you have like star players up and down, but you have guys who are gonna want minutes. And like I was putting this together. We can go through it if you want. I was putting this together, and Javon Carter and Torrey Craig were just simply, and Chris Duarte were
like
just out
DNPs, right?
They can't play.
You know, that's Sports Chicago style in the comments saying Craig and Carter have to go. What's going on, everybody? Dinko Hoops, good to see you. French Bulls TV. Crenshaw Mafia saying Javon Carter's still here. That's if Javon Carter and or Torrey Craig get minutes over my sweet special boy Julian Phillips out of the gate next season, I'm gonna mutiny.
But see, but that for me, that's also part of the question too, because you want to put Javon Carter out there to showcase him as well, right? You know, for a trade.
Maybe Goat and I were just having this conversation over there before the show. Like, maybe you can get something for Torrey Craig, who's a solid vet.
Yeah.
Can you even get something for Javon Carter on an expiring? I don't know that you can.
But you got to do something with them.
But and see, even more so than Torrey Craig and Javon Carter, to me, that's the issue with Zach and with Vooch.
Correct.
It's like our guy Fish in the comments said, you know, Vooch is still going to start. He's not taking anything away from anybody, and he isn't going to get in the way of keeping a pick. Nice little backhanded dig on Vooch there and him not leading to wins. But if prioritizing the youth movement coincides with prioritizing to the rest of the 29 teams in the NBA, hey, we still got Zach and we still got Vooch, but we're steering youth movement-wise. Look what they can do. Then you have to play around Zach and Vooch, and you can't play around your young guys.
Yeah.
There's like a giant roadblock as far as trying to accomplish two things simultaneously through the first 2 months of this upcoming season.
Yeah, they're deep at these positions. The thinnest is obviously Vooch. It's the thinnest because Jalen Smith is the one behind him. Unless you want to, do the Will Gottlieb small ball on some games and,
or Adama Sanogo.
Or Sanogo, who, no. He won't, I won't think he'll see no
He's not going to get, like, minutes every game, but there's going to be games where he plays also. So, like, when you think about, like, average minutes per game, that's one way to look at it and think about it. But then you also have to figure in, like, there's going to be stretches this season where somebody goes down and that inflates somebody else's numbers.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
That's a way to think about it too. But just in terms of breaking it down, I mean, like I said, you're starting Kobe, Zach, Giddey, Patrick, Vooch. You've got Io, Jalen Smith, Buzelis, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, and Lonzo Ball. That's a 6-man bench.
Right.
So now you're playing 11, and that does not even include for Javon Carter, Torrey Craig, and Chris Duarte.
Right.
And yeah, I just don't know. I mean, Javon Carter, he has a $6.8 million player option next year. If he just doesn't play this year, doesn't get in, do you think he would leave that money on the table and try to go find another contract? Or do you think he would take that money and just sit for another 2 seasons? I mean, that's
a good question.
It's just an interesting question. But ultimately, like, the Bulls, I think the big picture here is, like, the Bulls still have moves to make. And I'm not saying you can't have 15 good players on your roster, but they need to figure out who are really going to be their staples. And I don't think they have the answer to that yet.
Yeah, and because the key is, again, the focus has to be on the youth. And that's the bottom line of everything. And, of course, they're still trying to get off Zach by any means necessary. And who knows, it might happen, but it doesn't look like it will. But with guys like Vooch still being there, and every time I think about this, I always forget about Torrey Craig. I always forget about Javon Carter. And Torrey Craig is a guy, obviously, I think they'll be looking for as far as trades are concerned. You don't really have to play him to showcase him. We already know what he can do. It's guys like Javon that I think have to get minutes and sneak in to get those things. But then I think of guys like Dalen Terry, like, because Dalen's been working his ass off, to get out there to play, like, and he's going to want to play. What do you do with him? He earned some of Billy's respect, getting into the games last year where we didn't think he would be able to.
Yeah.
But then injuries started occurring, those things started happening, and then he just kind of giving it to him. Like, fine, go in there, give me 7 to 8 minutes. Let's see what you can do out there. Does that take a back seat now? Does he take a back seat to Modest? Because I know he ain't going to be cool with that. Like, rookie coming in starting over me or getting more minutes over me. He ain't going to be all right with that one. What about Io's minutes? You know what I'm saying? He's going to obviously go to the bench. Where on the bench is he going to be most effective? Is he 6th, 7th, or 8th man? You know what I mean? Coming in, because he can be effective in all of them. But again, these are just so many questions that they have left to answer. We know we know what the answer is, what they want to get to. We know the floor, which is you want to be young. Yeah. You want the youth movement. But how do you get there? And you don't want to give up all this capital. You don't want to get rid of this. You don't want to get rid of that. But you know these guys have to go. But you got to showcase some of those guys too, because you can't just get rid of Lonzo. You got to showcase him. He got to play. He got to be out there. That's going to cut into Giddey's minutes. If you think Giddey's going to be your starting point guard, it's going to cut into his thing. So it's just so many questions. I'm interested to see how they handle it and kind of break everything down. But damn, they got a log jam at a lot of these positions.
And you were just saying, like, the log jam of, even if you just refer to Javon Carter, Torrey Craig, and Duarte as like DNPs at this point, stretching it to an 11-man rotation, there's still only those 240 total minutes to go around. And then when you're talking about the younger guys and you saying, Dalen's been working, what is his role going to be, and will he be okay with it? Then the question is, like, okay, are all of these guys going to find a few minutes in Billy's rotation and play almost every game, but it's like, okay, well, so Lonzo will maybe start on a minutes restriction. It'll open up some window of time for Julian, for Dalen, whoever. But like, or might we see them be like switched around and maybe like Dalen's a DNP one night, Julian's a DNP the next night? Because either way, I feel like it's going to be hard for the younger guys to find any sort of rhythm when you're talking about young guys getting more significant experience on an NBA floor and improving their games because of those minutes. True. It's either way, it's going to be a roadblock of, well, I played last night, but I'm not going to play the day after tomorrow. Yeah. Or I played tonight, but I only played 5 minutes. How do you develop like that?
And like in the past, I mean, Billy has largely stuck with the 9-man rotation, and we're talking about 11 guys right here. So all of us, like, automatically, Kobe's minutes are going to go down. Mm-hmm. Zach's minutes are not going to be what they used to be. Vucevic's minutes are not going to be what they used to be. And I don't know who's going to win out in these kind of competitions, whatever you may call it in training camp. But at the end of the day, like you're not going to just be playing 11, 12, 13 guys. I mean, that's just not feasible. And so where do these minutes come from and who gets them? And yeah, I think there's going to be games where Julian Phillips and Dalen Terry don't play, but at the same time, like that's the whole point of this season, is to get those guys minutes. Mm-hmm. And so that's the situation that you're in right now. Same with Modest. Like if this was last year and he was getting 10, 12, 14 minutes a game, that might make some sense. But now it's a situation where you want him to explore his game a little bit and run around and see what he can do. But the problem is, like, it's just hard to find minutes in the rotation when you've got Patrick Williams back, when you've got Josh Giddey playing probably a lot of small forward. Zach's going to have to play some small forward to make room for Ayo and Lonzo and Kobe in the backcourt. Yeah. Like, you can kind of stretch this out among multiple positions. It's a much more positionless league now, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I just don't know who are going to be like the first ones that get looks. And ultimately, it could come down to injuries. It could come down to just who looks good in training camp, and Billy rides with that guy for the whole season. We just don't know yet, but he has a lot of options, and that's a good problem to have, but it is a problem.
No, it is. And I think you mentioned the other part. I think some of those guys are going to be playing positions that aren't meant for them or they're not comfortable at. Like Zach at the 3, you know what I mean? Giddey at the 3, man, it could work, sure. Hypothetically, he's got the size, but does he have the defense? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah, what about Kobe? You know what I mean? And his growth, his defense. It's so many questions, dog. I don't envy their task.
So many. Bastion NQ has in the comments saying, concerned that might develop Modest in the G League over a stretch. I hope not. I hope that he just goes and gets thrown in the deep end of the NBA.
I agree.
11th overall pick, rookie, go play.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, this is not like a source thing. This is just like my read on. Maybe we can get to it after the break.
Yeah, we'll get to it coming up next, including the rest of this conversation and taking a look at the Bulls cap situation and whether or not they should waive Bitim, look to sign somebody else in free agency. That's all still ahead on CHGO Bulls. Beer.
Drink it. Chug it. However you do it. As if it's Coors Light, you're going to be in a chill mindset. Because between work, social media, and the choices life throws our way, it's no wonder we won't worked up. Coors Light celebrates rising above and choosing a chill mindset. Why not turn that rained-out barbecue into the Io DeSumo and Will the Go Gottlieb 59th annual karaoke house party? Or after a tough loss, settle scores with an ice cold peace offering. Make the choice to choose chill, then reach for a frosty cold Coors Light because it's mountain cold refreshment. Because when those mountains turn blue, oh yes, you know what to do. It's as cold as the Colorado Rockies. Cold lager, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. So when you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open that frosty cold Coors Light. Mountain cold refreshment, y'all. What mountains? The Colorado Rockies. Make the most out of the times to choose chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door via Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Basketball. It's CoorsLight.com/CHGO Basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
CHGO Bulls today also brought to you by our friends at Ray Chevrolet. Use your first draft pick and find the right new Chevy and price for you. Visit our partners at Ray Chevy this July to shop the Freedom to Save sales event going on all month long at their location on Route 12 in Fox Lake or at their website, raychevrolet.com. It's one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest. You'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Plus, you can find the perfect tailgating vehicle for this upcoming Bears season and all of our fun CHGO Bears tailgate parties.
Bears.
Right now, you can get $12,000 off MSRP on a new 2024 Chevy Silverado, or you can lease the new 2024 Chevy Trax for only $188 a month for 24 months. Or you can cruise into July your own way and shop over 125 of their vehicles, all priced under $20,000. Deals on deals on deals. Mm-hmm. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, you've also, of course, heard us mention the raised price promise, the one that guarantees that making your next vehicle will be as easy as you want it to be price-wise. The price you see online on their website is the price you will pay when you go to the dealership and say, hey, I want that car or truck for that price. If anything, Ray and his team will do everything they can to find you even more savings when you head to the dealership, but you will never pay a penny over the price you see online.
No.
Shop the Freedom to Save sales event all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive.
Shout out.
Vroom.
Shout out Shirtless Wonder who waved to us while Matt was speaking.
The one and only.
Shout out
great.
To him, the legend. Good to see him. Glistening.
He sent me a pitch for a potential new sponsored segment thing.
Okay.
And like a little doodle of it.
Okay. With artwork?
Well, yeah, he just sent me a picture of a doodle that he made.
Okay.
It involves hat tosses and it's really clever.
Oh. Are you going to go forward with this?
We got to talk about it.
Okay.
But I'm loving this idea of it as something to maybe do next season.
All right. I'm with it.
I mean, he's not only a wonder because he's shirtless and glorious and always chilling on the balcony across the alley.
True.
Guy is an idea man.
Yeah. Not just a hat rack, ladies and gents.
That's right. Okay, so what were we saying before that break about this tricky situation with Billy's rotation?
Yeah, I just don't think, and again, I'm just saying, this is my interpretation of it. I don't think the Bulls are going into a down year relative to what their expectations have been last year, or in previous years rather, right? Clearly there was a push for the playoffs. Now you let your best player walk and your second best player, you trade him for a young player or project with potential. But I don't think you're going into this with anything other than the ability to sell the future, right? We talk a lot about the idea of selling wins or selling hope. And as a franchise, you have to pick one of those two. You have not done either the last couple of years. Now you're going into this new phase where you have the opportunity to sell hope, but it's hard to do that when you still have to play your veteran players. And so I tend to think that there will be some agreement or understanding between front office and coaching staff that we need to move forward here and build and sell our young players for the future. We need to say, look, we had an exciting year. It was bad, but look what we're building for the future. And I think it's hard to do that when you're carving out minutes for Torrey Craig or Javon Carter or Chris Duarte over, Kobe White or, Dalen Terry, Patrick Williams, Modest Buzelis. It's just hard to do that. And so ultimately, I do think there will be a priority placed on the younger players. I wonder at what point in the season that will come. Is that going to be a first game of the season? We're just going straight to the young guys? Or is it going to be we'll try for a month or two, and if we aren't in the race, then we'll kind of start to pivot and sell off a little bit more? obviously, I think we all know what my preference would be on that. Like, you got to go with the younger guys right away and let them help you visualize what your future can be. I think that's really what this season is about. And my hunch is that the Bulls, knowing what they did this summer to move on from their two best players, my hunch is that they understand that.
I hope so. Do you think the Bulls, if it comes down to it, would be willing to bite the bullet to actually just go younger? And what I mean is they clearly said they don't want to give up capital to get rid of Zach LaVine. You don't want to take back bad deals. You want to improve your team as you make these trades. But do you think as it gets closer, because we all agree they have to go young, do you think they'll be more willing to do the bad thing to get to the good thing?
So I wrote a while back about like the pros and cons of keeping Zach versus the pros and cons of trading him. And I think one thing that people haven't really considered when they're thinking about this is like, what is the cost of keeping your pick this year? And are you willing to pay an asset in order to do that? Like a worse asset down the line. Is it worth 2 second-round picks in order to ensure a top 10 pick this year, or to give yourself the best chance possible? Is it worth 5 second-round picks? Is it worth the Portland pick and 5 second-round picks? I'm not sure what that price is, but at a certain point, I do think that the value of that pick is stronger, carries more weight than some of these other assets that you have. And so I don't know. I say that to say I'm not sure whether they attach a pick to Zach to help ensure that they can keep their own pick. That is not my understanding of what is going to happen. But at a certain point, maybe that changes, because I think the value of this pick coming up it's not just like all first round picks are created equal, right? Like this one, I think in particular, understanding that it's protected, understanding that you're in a really strong draft class, understanding that you've moved on from your best player and now you're searching for that franchise cornerstone. This is the time where that pick becomes really valuable. And so is it worth attaching a few smaller things to keep that? In generally speaking, no, I would not want to give up picks entering a rebuild, but is it worth it to give up picks to keep your pick entering a rebuild? I think that's a question.
Yeah. Do you think preseason will be that kind of deciding factor to whether they make that kind of decision to, say we're going to attach these picks and put them on Zach? Like, I'm just saying that to say, watching those guys play. They need to play now. Get his ass out of here.
I'm not smirking at your question because it's a legitimate question. I'm smirking at the notion of the Bulls thinking that far ahead on anything. Let's use the preseason to figure out what we're going to do for the actual season when it comes to, riding out some of these more veteran guys and giving them the minutes that we need, or if we're going to prioritize it.
I mean, that's how I would do it. Like, if
they don't know. They don't know.
True, they don't. If we're talking about prioritizing young guys, the best way to do that and give them the minutes and everything they need is the preseason, because you can see how they play and see what they have and see what you kind of have with the young fellas. And if it looks great and it's good, do you sit there and be like, oh, yeah, we need to get this done now?
See, that's the other thing that terrifies me about this very rocky situation the Bulls have put themselves in when we talk about the rotation is like, okay, we believe that there is a better version of Zach LaVine that still exists than the one we saw briefly last season.
Yeah.
Pouty, detached, unaggressive, and then hurt. There is a better version of Zach LaVine. Will we see that version if they say, hey, Giddey, the ball and the offense is yours? Because then you're just talking about Zach standing in the corner again, just like he did before he got hurt last season.
True.
So, like, can they figure that out in 4 preseason games? No, they can't. They need to make up their minds before that. But that is the only way I think the Bulls can make their way back to not having to give up assets to get off of Zach's contract, is if you see the closer to 25 points per game version of Zach. And if you see 25 points per game version of Zach, that's fewer touches for the young guys who are supposedly the future of the franchise and not Zach LaVine being the future of the franchise anymore. It's a no-win situation.
I do think that, I've said this before, but like, this idea that the Bulls have to have like a guy that you give the ball to and he runs every single thing on offense. He's a 35-40 usage guy. That's not going to be the case. I don't think that they want it to be that way, and I don't think that they should, because that doesn't set anybody up in a position to succeed. I think as good as DeMar was for this team the last couple of years, that was the downside of it, right? Was that he needed to play a certain style, and he worked really hard to try to expand his game, to try to fit into and around other systems to help make these guys better. And he did. But at the end of the day, DeMar is who DeMar is. And so part of that is giving him the ball in his spots and letting him operate. They don't have a guy like that anymore. And maybe you could say it's Zach. Maybe you could say it's Kobe. I don't really think it's going to be either of those guys. I think they need to form a different identity offensively. I think they will try to do that because I think it makes everybody look a little bit better, gets everybody more touches, keeps everybody a little bit more involved, juices everybody's numbers because who knows what those need to look like in order for you to actually be able to pull a deal off come deadline time. So I think that has to be a priority. And that's a lot on Billy's plate because this is going to be way different than what he has had to deal with so far. I think he's up to the task, but we will see.
And that's the other variable here. And it's, something that we were chatting with our pal Callie about out in Vegas a couple weeks ago is, DeMar is who he is. Zach is who he is. Billy's the one who's going to have to figure all this out. And if he has to talk Zach LaVine into doing something that isn't going to benefit and make Zach LaVine look good, that's going to be dicey.
At the same time, pretty much nothing Zach can do is making him look good. No matter what happens, people are finding the negative.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, you don't think Rich Paul is whispering in Zach LaVine's ear all summer, hey, go out there and drop 30. Go out there and drop 35. We're going to find you a trade, and the way we're going to do that is by reminding the rest of the NBA that you can be that lethal of a scorer. And that's Zach's motivation. Find a trade by looking like the two-time All-Star version of myself. I don't give a damn what the Bulls and Billy Donovan's plan is. Why should he?
Or is
They've been talking about trading it for years.
Or is it, look at how great you were individually, Zach, but this is what contributed to your reputation that you have now. If you want to get out of here, you have to conform to a different style of play. And that's going to involve getting off the ball a little bit more. It's going to involve not dominating the ball as much.
But see, that was the narrative last season, and it didn't work. It made him look worse.
I don't think that's true. He did it for 6 games, and then he got hurt. I think it was the injury.
It was the fact that he was pouting and being clearly passive.
Yeah, he's got, and that's part of it too, is he can help himself, I think, by one, playing well, obviously, but two, showing that, because no team that trades for him is going to trade for him to be the number one guy. I think if he has not learned that at this point in his career, after the last 365 days of him being basically lambasted by the media and just the national NBA narrative about him is that he's not good enough to be that guy. And if you want to get out of town, you have to prove that you can be the best number 2 or the best number 3 guy who's actually worth that $43 million you're making this year. Because if you aren't, nobody is going to trade for you. And now you're stuck in Chicago and it's worse for everybody, yourself most included. So I think he probably, and I'm not reporting this or saying anything like that, but he has to know that that's the situation that he's in. And I don't think it worked out well or looked necessarily the prettiest when he came back for those 5 or 6 games before he shut himself down with that surgery. But he was taking fewer shots. He was getting off the ball. Yes, it was uncomfortable. Clearly, he was not looking his best, but he did change. And I think he has to continue to work on that and make it look like he's a little bit more enthusiastic about
that part.
Because that matters too.
Yes.
Your approach and who are you and do you do other guys want to be around you and play with you?
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it too, because there's guys in the NBA that have a lot of sway with their front office.
You just talked about DeMar making that change and changing to a different game, a different style. But you never saw him pouting about it or doing anything about it. He just stepped up and he did it.
Right.
Because he's this will help the team. Fine, I'll do it. Zach has to do the same thing, man.
Derek Stevens in the comments saying, honestly, glad we're keeping Zach to try and up his value this season. Tired of teams trying to lowball us and calling us desperate. Well, they have been lowballing us being the Bulls. But, I mean, the Bulls are desperate. It's why they are where they are. They held on to not only Zach, but basically all their assets too long on a team going nowhere. And that's why we're here and talking about how they can simultaneously try to up veteran players' play value across the league to trade them, while also putting an emphasis on a youth movement. It is hard to accomplish both of those things simultaneously, so it's probably going to crash and burn. All right, still plenty more ahead, talking about Bulls cap sheet situation, whether or not they should waive Bitim and sign somebody else. That's all still ahead on CHGO Bulls. Hit that like button. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. We are all driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all.
What?
Don't search. Match, Dave. Match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed because it is your hiring and matching platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. We're talking Usain Bolt fast. Olympics.
That's fast.
And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So, if you are looking to hire, you need Indeed. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at that site, Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support CHGO Bulls by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/AllCity, ALLCITY. Terms and conditions apply. Terms apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Indeed. This ad is Baby Joey approved.
Oh.
Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades that are built to last. That's right. Our friends at Shady Rays have got you covered with the premium polarized shades that will not, I repeat, will not break the bank. Shady Rays, an independent sunglasses company, offering that world-class product, rated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. Over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames. Their shades have crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for your outdoor, and as this gentleman over here always proves, your indoor headphones. They have hundreds of options to choose from, ladies and gents, so you're bound to find the perfect match and the perfect pair to match your style. And if you don't love the shades, exchange it for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop, and their team always has your back with personal and loving support. See what I did there? Exclusive for the listeners out there, Shady Rays is giving away their best deal of the season. Head to ShadyRays.com, use the code CHGO, and get yourself 35% off those premium polarized shades. The drive by yourself. The shades that are rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people, because Shady Rays, y'all, where them rays are just so shady.
Oh, so shady.
Not slim.
No, not at all. Okay, so we saw the Bulls free up one of their two-way spots the other day by waiving Andrew Funk. Goodbye. Sayonara. Now, the thing that we have been wondering about is, okay, who are you going to use with that third two-way spot? But maybe, more interestingly, might you also waive Onuralp Bitim, whose contract is non-guaranteed? He's got 2 years and a little over $4 million remaining. The Bulls signed him to a 3-year deal when they promoted him to the squad. But non-guaranteed, only $350K guaranteed on opening night of the next NBA season, regular season. That contract becomes fully guaranteed for the 24-25 season on January 10th, 2025. If the Bulls wanted to make a move and add another piece to this team, as we're talking about, hey, like Billy's got like a 10 or 11 deep rotation already. But maybe it's not just about that, Goat. As you were, saying on our Slack earlier today, it's like it could be that you add a quality veteran player who's still on this open free agent market on a very team-friendly deal using a piece of the remaining MLE, for example, and then that's a piece that you could put in a trade if you are trying to move Zach midseason or something like that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the first thing is I don't think that the Bulls are going to waive Bitim unless there is a real reason to do it. The reason I say that is because, one, his guaranteed money right now is only, as you mentioned, Matt, $350K until opening night. And then it becomes fully guaranteed on January 10th, which means that it's convenient for themselves or for another team if they have the ability to waive him and it not be a cap hit. So, that's a valuable asset to a team if they want to clear out some space, if they want to cut a roster spot. You can do, like, a lot of teams right now in the second apron, they can't do like aggregating contracts together, right? So they can't do a 2-for-1 trade if they're over the second apron. But if the Bulls attached Bitim to, let's say, Zach LaVine, it doesn't really change the amount of money because he's only making like 1.8, 1.9. But it allows another team to send now two contracts back that can help offset the amount that Zach is. So I don't think that they would necessarily get rid of him. There's other guys you could do that with. Torrey Craig, I think, is a good example, but he's $2.8 million this year. My point is, I don't think that the Bulls are going to get rid of Bitim unless there's a real reason to do it.
Would you say that a real reason and enough of one to get rid of Bitim and sign somebody else is the fact that in 23 appearances for the Bulls big boy squad last season, he averaged in 11.5 minutes per outing 3.5 points on 38% shooting and 27% shooting from three? Because I think that's a pretty decent reason right there. Yeah, no offense, Bitim. We all had our fun.
We did.
Bitim is him when we were desperate and grasping at straws to be happy or excited about anything in March and April. watching this team go nowhere. But
You went
guess
dark
what?
real quick.
Well, yeah. Surprise, Dave.
No, impressed.
The darkness is always
impressed. Not
the darkness
surprised.
is always lurking.
Impressed. Go ahead.
Why get rid of him? Maybe that's why.
And so, yeah, that's exactly right. There could be a player that they want to improve that roster spot, right? If they want a better 15th man, or they want to get a 9th man or something and push everybody else down the pecking order, TM, then that could be an option. And I think that is a good option, right? Right now, they are about $4.7 million below the luxury tax. And they have a portion of the mid-level exception remaining. They used about 8.5 of that on Jalen Smith. But they're 4.7 below the luxury tax right now. If they waive Bitim, they could use the remaining 4.2 in the MLE, or they could use the biannual exception, which is an exception that you get every other season, worth $4.7 million.
Which they didn't use last year, right? They used on Tristan Thompson 2 seasons ago.
Right. And so now they have that. They could go out and get a guy that would, like I said, be the 8th, 9th guy and then push some of the other guys down on the roster. So that would be a reason. I think they would probably rather keep their flexibility and just the ability to like waive a guy if they needed to. But, there's some interesting names still on the free agent market.
Yeah.
Markelle Fultz, Tyus Jones are probably the top couple right now. Luke Kennard is another one who could be useful. We've just spent the first half an hour of this show talking about how there's already too many bodies to fit everybody in. So maybe it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, you are entering a phase where you're trying to accumulate talent. And there's some talent out there. Why not go get a guy? Maybe you can then package him later with another contract to go get a bigger contract, or maybe you can attach him to something else, or maybe it allows you to attach a different player because now Markelle Fultz is a fixture of your future. Who knows? It's just spitballing here, but they do have a little bit more flexibility, and I think we all can agree that there's still more to be done with this roster.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not a finished product right now, and I wonder if going out and getting one of the remaining free agents, because Gary Trent Jr. is a guy who is worth more than the minimum, which is what he just signed for.
Yes. Right.
And so I think a lot of guys, Tyus Jones, Markelle Fultz, Luke Kennard, Isaac Okoro, these are all guys that probably thought they were going to get a little bit more than the veterans minimum, or thought they would be able to get the full mid-level exception.
Right.
That's not available to them. So maybe they take a little bit less, they get a 1-year deal, try to prove it with the Bulls, and then get back out. Or they ask for a trade, and that's a little bit easier to work with when you can move salaries and send guys out in a trade.
Right, yeah. If you're watching along with us on YouTube, you see there, Brett Siegel of Clutch Points had this up on Twitter the other day, basically a quick rundown of the names that are still out there by position, and a lot of these are rotation guys.
Yeah, for real.
Tyus Jones and Markelle Fultz, obviously the most intriguing names on the list, but DSJ, Patty Mills, Malachi Flynn. I think I saw Shams tweeted just earlier this afternoon, Brooklyn picked up Killian Hayes.
Yeah, they did.
So there's a name off the board. But, you said, Lonnie Walker IV is there. Yeah. Shamet is there. Horton Tucker is there. Bulls legend Doug McDermott.
The legend.
You want some threes? You want some threes?
You want some good-looking misses?
McBuckets is there.
McBuckets in the building.
What do you think about this, Dave?
Precious Achiuwa is the name that just keeps jumping out at me. I'm like, wow, I can't believe he's out there like that. But there's such a weird position because I'm sitting there listening to you, Will, and the things I'm thinking in my head is, well, what is the benefit of keeping Bitim? And you mentioned the flexibility that the team could have by just holding on to him. If that's the only benefit I can get, then for me, and I'm speaking for me, that's not enough to hold on to him. But at the same time, I'm not trying to get one of these dudes because I think these dudes go hoop. You know what I mean? Am I really trying to be a better team? Or am I just cool, you know what I'm saying, where I am and just trying to bring up younger guys and do it like that? And that's why I would hold on to a guy like Bitim. These dudes, honestly, a lot of them can make your team better and fill some holes on your squad. I don't need that right about now. I just need to be young and continue to be fun bad.
The part of the idea of letting Bitim go to free up a roster spot to sign one of these names that's still available and looking like they're going to have to take a small portion of an MLE kind of contract or a veteran minimum is not to make the Bulls better next season.
Yeah.
It is to have them around to then flip again.
Yes.
In a trade where you are saying, hey, please take this off our hands, and you can also have this guy who's actually a useful NBA player.
So I guess, and let me ask you, would it make more sense for them to get a player who's already log jammed at the position, if they do this, I'm saying, to get a player that's log jammed at the position so it makes a trade a little more easier?
So that's, I think, why they probably won't do it, is because as soon as you sign somebody worth $4.7 million for the biennial exception, now you have zero. You cannot take back more money because they're hard capping themselves at the luxury tax, right? They're not going to exceed that number. Right now, they have $4.5 million of space between where they are and the luxury tax. If they use that $4.5 million to sign Markelle Fultz, yeah, you bring in Markelle Fultz, but at the same time, now you can't take back any additional salary in a trade without going into the tax. And that is a line that has been really difficult for them to walk these last couple of years, where they cannot do anything because it would push them into the tax.
Yeah.
So to me, I think the flexibility, the non-guarantee, it probably matters more. But here's what I'll say.
Okay.
To me, like, what percent of Josh Giddey is Markelle Fultz? A big guard. He's a better defender. He's fast. He can play in transition, get up, get the ball ahead, cannot shoot. He's older. He's injury prone. But like, I think he does a lot of the same stuff. To me, that's why I would have waited, or I would have traded Caruso for picks, because you can get a similar guy to that without now having to build around this Giddey player that you're gonna have to pay. You have to like find the right pieces to build around. I think that was like one of the criticisms that, you know, in the immediate aftermath of the trade, where it was just like, okay, good, we made a deal, we got some value for Caruso. Like, I just think now you're looking at a team that has to build around this guy. And like, I would have much rather drafted Topic at 11 and got a similar player, you know, a guard who struggles shooting the ball, and like then been able to use that other flexibility with Caruso to bring in different talent. And I think Fultz is a similar example to that. Like, maybe it would have made more sense to trade Caruso for picks, and then you bring in Fultz, and like, are you really losing that much between Fultz and Giddey? Some people may call me crazy. I still like Fultz. I think he's a good player. He's obviously flawed. He's obviously injury prone, and there's a lot of risk to it, but like, he does a lot of the same stuff. And I think when you limit your own flexibility in that way, it prevents you from taking on value when you can. And that's what we saw with the DeRozan trade. They didn't want to be in the tax, so they didn't want to take Barnes, which means they didn't get the real asset in that trade, which was the 2030 swap. They didn't want to trade, you know, Caruso for picks because they wanted to get their guy. That changes who you're able to draft and what you're able to do in free agency. And so I think this is an example of, yes, they could go out and get a talent, somebody who could be good, somebody who could be useful, somebody who they could build around or trade, but they can't really do that because it limits their flexibility. And I think that's just kind of a downstream effect of some of the moves that they've already made this summer, which in a vacuum may have been fine, but we're starting to see now, as the rest of the landscape kind of comes into, you know, vision here, that they can't always just continue to get value, which is exactly what you need to be doing as a rebuilding team, is getting value, prioritizing value, and finding it in any way that you can.
What's that like? Dave, your question is an interesting one, though, as far as, you know, does it matter with the position of the player if you're talking about just adding one of these guys off the remainder of the free agency scrap heap? Depending, you know, going back to our conversation at the start of the show about like Billy's rotation, like who's playing which minutes, because to me, I'll respectfully disagree, Will. I am more intrigued by the name Tyus Jones than I am Markelle Fultz. I know Fultz is a former number one overall pick who obviously had a rocky start to his career with injuries. As you mentioned, he is a flawed player. To me, it's like, I wanted the Bulls to sign Tyus Jones 2 summers ago.
That's true.
Like, after the flame out in 5 against Milwaukee in the first round, the season Lonzo went down. So we're talking like free agency in the summer of 2022, right?
Yeah.
You don't know what is going on with Lonzo, but even then it doesn't look good. And you're saying, okay, what can we do? That's the summer the Bulls bring in Dragic, right? And, that's their hooray signing. Tyus Jones ended up just re-signing with Memphis for 2 years, I think $29 million.
Something like that.
Like, I would have loved Tyus Jones two years ago. Now it's like, are the Bulls in the same scenario where I think Tyus Jones could have helped the Bulls win some games back then and replace Lonzo Ball? Now it's like, well, Lonzo's coming back.
But that's my point, is you already got the Lonzo replacement in Giddey.
Right, yeah.
And so now it doesn't make sense to get Tyus Jones, who actually could help you if you're trying to win.
But
we know they're not.
Tyus Jones could also help lots of teams.
But then why isn't he signed anywhere?
Good question, Guado. I don't know.
It's because teams don't want to give him money. And or because he hasn't gotten as much money.
If the Bulls sign him on a 4.2 fraction MLE contract or the the biannual, which I think is like 4.6, which would still I think keep the Bulls $100K under the tax, like with where they are now. That Tyus Jones on that contract on a half-season loaner is a lot more enticing of a trade chip for other teams.
Yeah, and like okay, for example, I think the Suns would be a team that would love to have Tyus Jones right now.
They need anybody.
The problem is they cannot offer anybody more than the veterans minimum.
Right.
And Tyus clearly wants more than that. Otherwise, he would have signed already.
Yeah.
So would you sign him to 4.8 and then trade him to the Suns at the deadline? Sure, that could be an option. But the problem is, and like maybe you get some seconds back. Maybe you get like a younger player that's not playing. Maybe you attach something else and they send you, who knows what the mechanics of the trade would be. But I think it's just a situation where it's like, do you really have the space now for Tyus to play even? Like if they had drafted Topic at 11, he wouldn't have been able to play at all this year.
Yeah.
You signed Tyus in free agency. You have this like starting caliber point guard that you help guys get better.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have like more flexibility to do other things. That would have made more sense. But I guess what I was saying earlier is like they kind of made their bed already with Giddey. And I think doing that Giddey trade really, and Ricky said this when he came on our show before the draft, like all of a sudden you're building around Giddey before he's proven his worth to you, before he's even signed long-term with you because of his limitations as a player. And I think I'm probably a little bit higher on Giddey than most. I think he could be a good player in the NBA, but he does have flaws. And I do think it's problematic that you are in the situation where you need to pay him immediately. And I think the alternatives might have been better in getting a similar player who could have gotten you some percentage of what Giddey gave you while also opening up or leaving other doors open. And that's the problem, is the Bulls have literally closed all the doors on themselves. There were no options the last couple of years. There's a reason why they didn't do anything. They couldn't. Anything that would have helped them would have put them into the tax, and anything that they actually could have sold on would have made them worse, and they didn't want to do that. So when you have no doors open, there's no action to take. There's no moves to make other than just to stand pat. That's why they did what they did for the last 2 years. And now it's like, it's a little bit different. You have some flexibility, but like it's the same concept of like you've made your bed now, and it's like you already are closed. You're closing yourself off to options and value when like that's what you should be focused on.
It's like turning down dates over and over again. And then finally, when you say yes, they're like, no, I done moved on and got somebody
I've found someone else
better than you. But no, I'm still great. No, you're not. And that's tough.
And when it comes to Tyus Jones, sorry, Will, Diesel 11 in the comments saying, and Jones plays zero defense. Cool, he'll fit right in. Y'all excited to watch the Bulls give up 140 a night this coming season? Because that's happening.
I think that was the comment I was going to address too. It's like the Bulls are not, they're not trying to be a great team this year. So like whatever flaws he has, that's fine.
Sure.
Number two, just because you have players at a position doesn't mean you turn yourself off from
that
the ability to take in more talent.
I agree.
You have to be in the business of acquiring and accumulating talent. That is the job of a rebuilding team. That is the problem with the way that the Bulls rebuilt following the Jimmy Butler trade. They did not do that. They drafted one player per draft for 4 years. They did not value second-round picks. They did not trade for additional picks. That was the problem with it. And all of a sudden, you're seeing that again just because they didn't prioritize picks in the future with any of these trades that they could have done. And now they aren't able to bring in talent that they could then flip down the line. It's like you have to be thinking about this in a little bit longer term view than just like we like our guys in front of us. Like there has to be, and that's like a concern that I have is like, okay, great. You've made it a directional change, but what's a 3-year plan here? What's a 5-year plan here? And I do not see the vision of that. And I think it's hard to do that when you still have Zach and Vuce on your roster.
Clearly.
They can't really identify a through line. And maybe you can say, look, we've got this young core and we're building with them and we'll figure out the rest later. I'm not saying it has to be perfect and laid out right when you go into it, but it would sure help if you didn't extend these guys on different year, like Vuce for 3 years when DeRozan only had 1 year left.
Yeah.
Like, why not just layer them together so that once one of them is gone, you can actually have flexibility to move forward in other ways. And like, it's the same now with Kobe and Ayo. They have 2 more years, but Patrick has 5. And it's like, what is are you tying these contracts together? Are you like tethering guys together so that you can build a cohesive plan of young players growing together? And I'm curious to see what happens with Giddey with this. Is he going to be 3 years?
Right.
And Kobe and Ayo are 2, and then you lose them and you can't re-sign them because Giddey's too expensive? Or is he going to line up with Pat?
Right.
And what happens with Kobe and Ayo in 2 years when they're up?
Yeah.
Do you factor their contracts into what you've done with Giddey and Patrick? And I think the long-term, bigger picture stuff is what we've been missing with this team. They put together a team that they thought worked and that did work. But then from there, it's like, what is the bigger picture here? And I don't see
the 1901 project, Will. That's the bigger picture. That's not your 5-year plan. That's your 10-year plan. That and a job flipping burgers at Hooters. Shout out Big Daddy. I completely agree with everything you just said, but I am a cynical Bulls fan who's like, oh yeah, it's great to have a 3 to 5 year plan on what kind of contracts you're going to have for what players of what ages that make up the core of your team. That is, as you said earlier, hopefully something that you're selling to your fan base that is wins or hope for near future wins, right? Mm-hmm. The Bulls have never operated that way.
Yeah, that's true.
When it comes to constructing their rosters, whoever the front office has been, they don't operate that way. They operate as a business, not a basketball team, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So if Bulls fans, because we're all bloodthirsty, insanely passionate, are like excited enough after hearing a few things at training camp, maybe in Nashville, fun, to pack the United Center because they want to see Josh Giddey play. They want to see Modest Buzelis play. They want to see Kobe White maybe take another step in his game. Then there is no 3 to 5 year plan that they care about. Hey, we built an elevated garden next to the United Center where a parking lot used to be. Fun. That'll bring people in. That's the planning they care about. They don't care about what the heck they're doing with their basketball team.
Yeah, there's a deep belief they have in players that we just don't see. Or have, I would say it like that. And not saying that these guys aren't good and can't be good, but their irrational confidence is great. But irrational confidence can't be there when you're the one running the team like that. You can have confidence in your guys, but no, man, you're going to be the starting guard on the NBA Finals team next year. No, we can't approach those things like that. And I'm saying that to say it feels like they approach certain things like that. They operate as a team that wins every year. And those teams that win every year, this is honestly how they kind of operate. It's just about what's happening next year. Like Pat Riley does that all the time. He's not thinking about 4 years down the line. How can I get back to the finals next year? That's it. That's my whole thought process. They have that thought process, but haven't figured out how to get to the actual playoffs.
Theirs is the same as Pat Riley's, but it's how do we get back to that epic Bulls-Hawks play-in game next year?
But that's my point. Like, yeah, Pat Riley has bigger things, and he's making bigger moves to actually get himself there with actual talent, stars, and all these other things.
Yeah.
And logical moves. They're doing it based off of belief, and that's not going to work. Belief is part of it, for sure, but you got to have that talent to come with it. Even what you just said, Will, like how they operated in a sense of we're going to pass on certain talent because we have stuff at that position. You're right. Like, because we talked about that with Stewart. This is why we didn't want them to pass on him. Just because you got point guards don't mean you can't bring in more talent there and figure out what to do with it in that sense. We've seen them do that previously, just pass on the talent because they thought they had somebody there. Not that somebody was a top 30 player in the NBA or a top 20 player, I should say, in the NBA, or somebody that's going to carry you to a playoff run or anything like that. No, we just have a belief in this guy. It's got to be more than that.
We believe that when Derek went down, it really set us back. We believe that when Lonzo Ball went down, it really set us back. That is the belief that exists in this organization.
But I will say this, like the Bulls, given what has happened the last couple of years, and I think I've probably been a little bit generous with them in terms of trying to separate the last 2 seasons of failure and inactivity from the decisions and like change of direction that we've seen this summer. Maybe that's being a little bit too generous because I do think that obviously they're connected and they're tied together. Mm-hmm. But given the situation that they're in and that they put themselves in, it's very hard to formulate a plan if the plan is not, okay, we're going to do everything we can to just strip it down for parts. Mm-hmm. They're trying to rebuild while also tear it down at the same time. And that's a hard thing to do. And so it's not surprising. It's not surprising that they haven't figured out like a concrete 3 to 5 year plan with this.
It's like someone digging a hole and then a person next to them filling it back in with each freaking shovel.
If you're the process Sixers, the plan was, okay, this is going to be 5 years. We're going to tank every year. We're going to sell it off for parts until we find our guys.
Sure.
And then we're going to build around them.
Yes.
The Bulls are skipping that down period, right? They don't want to be bad for 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
They want to start the rebuilding process, not the tear down, but the building it back up process now. And because of the way that they've layered in their contracts, it's really difficult to do that.
Yeah.
I think they obviously thought they were going to be able to move Zach. I thought so too.
Yes.
Didn't work out that way. I don't understand still for the life of me why they re-signed Vooch at any number.
Nope, nobody got
it. That has set them back. But the problem is it's hard to formulate a plan when you have 43 plus 21 plus 20, $84 million of money on your books in Lonzo, Vooch, and Zach that is not a part of your future, but that needs to play now, but that you don't want right now, but that you have to attach picks to move on from. So it's just really difficult position that they put them in, that they put themselves in. Again, that's self-imposed, but okay, how do you break out of it while also learning from your mistakes so that when you do sign some of these new guys, what happens with Giddey? What happens with, now Patrick is on this longer term deal. You have to be able to give yourself flexibility to move off of things, to accumulate value in other ways. Otherwise, you're just like fixated on the pieces on the board in front of you. But like some of those pieces are not, some of the pieces that ultimately are on your board are not there right now.
Yeah.
You have to prioritize draft picks. Like the fact that they didn't do that, it does not make sense to me
at all.
But I think it's also, it goes to show that like they weren't thinking about a longer term vision with this, understanding that there's still going to be a barrier into that. It's not going to happen right away, but they're trying to make it happen right away by bringing in some of these younger guys without being able to move off of Zach.
Ripped in the comments saying, fun bad. Fish saying, there will never be more fun bad than Jamal Crawford. Dude, you remember young Jamal Crawford?
That was some fun
That was
bad
the definition
right there,
of fun bad.
Oh, he would drop 51
Big,
on your ass.
Big T74 saying, I'm not wasting my money going to see this shit show. I'll watch it on TV. That's right. In Jerry Vision. Coming soon. Just like Project 1901. That's it. We are out of time for today. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us on a Sunnyside Summer Thursday. Don't forget that promo code HICHGO at sunnyside.shop to get what? That's right. 50% off your first 3 purchases on that website, sunnyside.shop. That's a deal. That's 150% off with 3 purchases collectively.
It's a deal, guys.
Bam.
Use it.
Back tomorrow with another episode. Goat, you want to tease what's going on tomorrow?
Nope. Want to keep it a surprise.
Surprise.
Special surprise episode tomorrow. Tune in.
Tune in. Same time, 5 p.m. Central to round out the week. In the meantime, Goat is at Will_Gottlieb. Read the stuff. AllCHGO.com. Big day. Bow. BAWL Sports. Our pal and producer on the controls, the one and only Joseph Spathis. He is at Joey Spathis. I'm Bulls_Peck. We are CHGO_Bulls. Thanks for tuning in. Hit that like button on your way out. Have a great Thursday night. Till next time. T-Rep be good.
Ric Flair. Peace.